Welcome to yet another episode of Connecting the Dots podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by the Coalition of Health Research and Development CREED based at the AMREF Health Africa. It is the first of two episodes of the Culture of Science campaign, a series which seeks to amplify community-led insights and expert opinions in the area of health research, development, and innovation. Science has real-life impact, especially when it moves from the bench to the bedside. This is what it makes a knowledge-based economy, one that uses research to solve society's problems. To quote our guest, the science we do is an economic activity. On this episode, we look at what it takes to translate science into material impact. We sit down with someone who is helping bridge the gap between health and industry in the health sector and hear about the opportunities we have for more homegrown health innovations on this very continent. Today, I sit with my career twin, Dr. Robert Karanja, a biomedical scientist turned entrepreneur. His academic background is actually a PhD in parasitology and entomology. And while he was working at the Kenya Medical Research Institute, that is KEMRI, he realized very quickly that labs alone couldn't solve our own problems. A decade ago, he co-founded Vilgrow Africa, an incubator dedicated to early-stage health startups. And under his guidance, Vilgrow helped channel, get this, 4 million indirect investment, but it's not the 4 million that's important. It's actually the fact that the 4 million equated to 50 million follow-on investment. It created more than 1,000 jobs, 50 new income revenue streams, and it works across more than 30 African countries. Dr. Karanja is currently the executive director at BioLinks Africa, where he continues to build bridges between research, industry, and policy. Karibu sana, Dr. Karanja.
Asante, thank you so much for having me, Juliet.
You know, this bio, I'm quite impressed. Like, how old are you?
Oh my goodness.
These are amazing achievements.
Well, I always say the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The next best time is today. So when you have a chance to start. And the 10 years do pass. As you've noticed, it's now 10 years from Vilgrow. 2015, everybody was looking at me thinking, what is this guy doing? What is he talking about?
Yeah.
Have you lost your marbles?
And I'm sure everyone was asking you, are you sure? Are you going to succeed? And 10 years is a short time to be able to have such achievements. What was it in your early career, especially at KEMRI, that made you decide, no, being at the lab, doing malaria research is not enough, and now you want to go into entrepreneurship?
I call it the University of Hard Knocks. So I was very privileged because at the time I was joining KEMRI, there was this discussion about sustainability. Mm-hmm. I got to take an interest in the aspects of intellectual property and tech transfer. Mm-hmm. So I was very involved in the establishment of KEMRI's IP policy, tech transfer policy, operationalization of that department within KEMRI, talking to scientists about the work they're doing and how can they come and disclose so that we can get patenting and things like that. Right. So I really got really involved in that work because to me, for whatever reason, very early in my life, I decided I need to fight poverty.
Yes.
So I had to ask myself, how do I fight poverty if I'm doing research? And so IP seems to be like the most obvious answer to that question. So long story short, we developed a rapid test kit for HIV. And this was during the days of the MDGs. So you can imagine we are there thinking the world is telling us we need to address poverty, MDG 1, then I think hunger, then MDG 3, which had HIV, TB, malaria. So we were, frontline in the heat of the battle coming up with this technology from our science in KEMRI. And we really did not sell a single test kit, not because the technology was inferior, it was actually superior to anything in the market.
Yeah.
But we were really extremely naive as entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
We were coming into this as scientists.
The business side was
misread who is our customer. We thought it was the Ministry of Health.
Yeah.
Ministry of Health, meanwhile, is getting free rapid test kits from USAID, from Global Fund.
Global Funders.
So the Treasury is asking them, and why do you want to waste our money? We are a resource-constrained country.
Yes.
So long story short, we wrote the book on what not to do. And so together with a good friend of mine, Dr. Wesley Rono, we said we can't have somebody else go through this whole experience like we did. Why not put together, package all of our learnings into our curriculum? And we ended up doing a bioentrepreneurship program with Strathmore Business School. Mm-hmm. So I was so my initial transition was actually from Cambridge to Strathmore. As faculty in the business school, talking about how do we address the issue of the business of the science, because there's a lot of great science, but it's not seen the light of day. What are we doing wrong? How do we? By then, I'd also picked up on innovation systems and systems thinking, moving from linear approach to understanding. It's about an ecosystem. And our ambition at the time was literally to have a crossover program that takes very good scientists, but very naive business people
yeah.
and help them to get the 101 of business.
Yeah.
But also at the
Important,
same
crucial.
time, get some of the key innovation actors, investors in this ecosystem, to also move from their very advanced understanding investment banking to also what is biotech? What are we talking about? What are we tinkering in those labs? And why is it important? So it was a crossover for both the VC analysts and the scientists in order to actually start to build bridges within the ecosystem and unlock the potential, because you need capital. So long story short, that is how I started off, just by understanding you can do a lot of good work. It can backfire. And people chalk the failure to the person who, behind the dream, the vision bearer.
Right.
And in Kenya, we're notorious in terms of being very unforgiving to failures.
Yes.
And I say the failures, it's not the person that has failed, it's just the idea. And it's not the idea that was bad. It's a lot of times I'm realizing it's the ecosystem that is not aligned.
Yeah. Or it's not even an enabling environment that's been created. Walk us through, what does it look like building the capacity of scientists and also the VCs? Because that's very interesting. So when you were at Strathmore, is it that you created, was it a module? Was it a class where you walk? And how many months was that? And,
good question. Yeah. So initially, what I had in mind was to do like a postgraduate certificate. So very academic. Again, I'm academia.
Yeah.
But when I went to Strathmore, I was very fortunate because at the time Strathmore was setting up their MBA in healthcare management, and the lead guy that was driving that is Professor Steve Samut, who is a professor at Wharton. And his life is amazing. It reads like the biotech story, like literally from the 70s.
Yeah.
He's been involved either from the tech transfer. I think the very first tech transfer in biotech was his university, him licensing to I think, Monsanto, the biotech from the university.
Yeah.
And so his life was really, it's sometimes I tell people serendipity, but it's beyond serendipity, because just the odds of when I'm thinking, what are we doing? How do we organize ourselves as a country, as a region? Having that kind of a resource within Nairobi, and then meeting with him in Strathmore. And he basically said, I like your idea, but can we change it? Can we make it a boot camp? And I'm like, so what the heck is a boot camp? All I know is the boot camp in the movies. The military, the sergeant shouting at you. And I'm like a bit...
that would be funny for the scientists, actually.
Let me tell you, I understood now why it's called a boot camp, because in a very short time, you're trying to... Yeah, it's a crash course. And you're introducing all of these new words, all of these new frameworks, and, it's a whole new world. And immersion. It's an immersion experience that you just throw people into the deep end, and you hope they're going to swim.
Yeah. Wow.
So it is a boot camp, and so we did a boot camp together that we structured to be, I think, 1 week over a period of about 9 months. So like we'd have a week every quarter, over 3 quarters.
What are some of the amazing innovations that have come from that immersion program, even at Strathmore, and then leading you to the amazing data points that we've had about how much money you've been able to raise, how many jobs you've created, how many startups you've set up, from ideation all the way downstream to commercialization? In
terms of how we started, the bootcamp was amazing. I loved it. I think I discovered I love teaching. And to this day, I love teaching.
Yeah.
But
I can see you
from
as a
an
good teacher.
impact perspective, it was very wanting, because it was a lot of head knowledge. And these scientists were really not being empowered to actually go and implement what they'd learned. And to me, my takeaway from it was, what we need is less of the classroom approach, more of just a doing approach, which is basically an incubator.
Yeah.
So Vilgrow for me ended up being my answer to that gap, because again, by virtue of, I think the one thing about me is I've been very consistent throughout my life. I've talked of innovation. So it became my brand. And so I was introduced to the team, which is basically Wilfred, our current CEO, and Rob by Grand Challenges Canada, because when they were doing the R&D that led to the launching of Grand Challenges Canada, they came and did a lot of research across the continent looking at stagnant health technologies. And GCC was built to address this issue of why do we have stagnant health technologies. And so Vilgro, which had been so Vilgro, just a bit of a backstory, started in 2001 in India. So what we've done is, as Vilgro, is to be a franchise.
Okay.
We took the learnings from India. How do you work with invention-based enterprises, and how do you make them into investable ventures? So and the benefit of having 10 years of learning and refining a model, and then now taking that and bringing it to Africa and saying, can this work for Africa? What do we need to tweak and change here and there?
So contextualizing.
That was, yes, just contextualization.
Yeah.
So we were very, very, very blessed because a lot of the issues that most ESOs struggle with had already been addressed predominantly in a very large way by Vilgro India.
Yeah.
What is the business model for an ESO? We took that on and we were able to hit the ground running. Grand Challenges Canada came in and said, we've done a lot of seeding of ideas in Africa. Kenya seems to be leading in terms of the number of grants they receive, but none of them seem to be crossing from seed into transition into scale. Can you help us to identify why? So with that as one of the very first consultancies we did to GCC as a client, and it ended up shaping the mission and vision for Vilgro, which was then to say we're going to focus in health sector, forget all the other sectors, so that we're able to go deep. And at the time, the gap now was there was no health expertise. So I walked in and became the co-founder and CEO for Vilgro because I was bringing in a little bit more experience on the ground.
On the health side.
On the health side. But Wilfred was bringing in 1 year experience of working embedded within Vilgro in India. So we were able to hit it off quite well. And the other guys, Rob and Mutugi, were a great part of the journey as well. So we started off, in a sense, by inheriting the challenge of Grand Challenges Canada, talking to all their grantees to understand where they stuck, understanding what do we need, how can our model support them, and that kind of then was was our launch pad in terms of our operations in Kenya and in Africa.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I want us to dwell a little bit on the gap of academia and then industry, and really unpack that a little bit. And in a previous interview, you said something that for me I really, really liked, that scientists are the front line soldiers of economic development. And on this podcast, we've talked a lot about R&D, and the huge gap between incredible science that's usually published. Yeah. It's in the medical journals.
Yes.
And then you have the industry here in the manufacturing, and nothing's, translating. It's not leaving the shelves. Yeah. But I'm curious, why do we have such few breakthroughs making it, downstream? What is it? Yeah. What is the roadblock? It almost feels like there's a neck in the bottle.
There is, and it's a very big one. It's a market failure. Okay. So when we think of what our economists call the laissez-faire, that invisible hand, it's not operating for us in Africa when it comes to the health sector.
Why?
And the reason is two main reasons. The first one is the business model for the health industry. So if you think of the supply chain of it, now forget the healthcare, which is the service. Now in the products, the drugs, the vaccines, the medical equipment, and stuff like that, we find the business model is very, very simple, but it's the most lucrative industry in the world. You come up with a solution, you patent it, and for the next 20 years, you're just price gouging. You operate at the absolute limit of what the market can accept in terms of the costing of your product.
Oh gosh!
So that is the industry. That's why, again, pharma is just the most profitable industry, bar none.
Yeah.
Now, when you take that and you come to Africa, what do you see? You find very low purchasing power, and so it's very difficult for the innovative pharma world or medtech world to develop solutions for our market, because they're looking at Africa and asking, what revenues are we going to expect from Africa?
Right.
Can we do this price gouging? There's literally no price elasticity. We are so price sensitive that a small change, people shift to the next.
Can't afford it, they'll go to the cheapest.
And we have great science happening that is relevant for Africa. Great science happening in Africa, great science happening in the global north, but the business model is not going to work for Africa. So we need to innovate, not just in terms of frugal innovation, which is a big principle for what we do, asking, what does it have to cost? When you're told a drug costs $100 million to develop, my question is, why is it costing $100 million?
So
Is there a
much.
smarter way of doing it? Can it be done more frugally? Can we use AI, machine learning? Who knows? Can we bring down the cost? Can we reduce the lead time? Yes, we can. That solves one part of the problem. Second part is, what's the business model?
Yeah.
Because what works for the West
Yeah. It's not
is
going
not
to
going to
apply
work here.
here. Yeah.
And the numbers are very telling. If you look at the US, a population of about 350 million people is literally about 45% of what the entire industry, where the entire industry revenues comes from.
Okay.
So in terms of market share, this one country is 45 to 50% of market share.
Yeah.
Africa, we are 1.3.
Billion.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are
Population-wise.
0.8% in terms of the revenues that the industry gets from Africa. So we are a neglected market.
So this is for pharmaceutical products or just
Pharmaceutical
across
products,
the board?
medical equipment, you name it.
Diagnostics.
Yeah, we are in a very neglected market.
With
So
1.5 billion.
1.5,
plus.
yes, because again, it's about the purchasing power.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
remember,
How much they can spend.
this is an innovative industry. We innovate, we patent, we get a monopoly.
Yeah.
And we milk it for all its worth. That is the A to Z of how the industry works. So what we need for us is now more of the embracing of the social entrepreneurship mindset of saying, okay, yes, we need to be profitable, but we also need to make sure we are not dying. It doesn't make sense to allow, to
People
just
to
serve. But to be honest, if you look at COVID, that was a really good example of how this industry works.
Yeah.
Before we could get vaccines, places like the US, true to their normal, the kind of value they create for the industry, they were doing their fifth round of vaccines before we could get started.
The first one.
Yeah, and I remember they kept going from, we'll do this. Then they said, even kids now need to be vaccinated. For us, it was first line.
Yes, our
And
health
then,
workers.
Yes, first line health workers. Then the other
Older
first line of whoever,
people.
then older people. So we never got to a point we even talked of kids being vaccinated at all.
Yeah, I don't remember that. And it's so funny because our current situation around the world with global funding, and the seize and the exit of the USAID, are you finding, for example, that even locally we're beginning to rethink how we address problems with our own homegrown solutions and then creating a market? Is our government rethinking, the use and the opening up of markets and saying, no, we're only going to start utilizing technologies, devices that are locally made? Because I think ideas cross borders. And it's not that this continent is lacking of ideas and solutions. And I'm sure you've experienced that even with the Grand Challenges Canada exercise.
I think what you're pointing out is very true. When we're neglected, the way we're neglected, it means nobody is really innovating for this market. And so it means we have an amazing monopoly without having to patent.
I know, right? And not even beyond our borders,
Exactly, Kenya.
East Africa.
And the question for me is, how do we then ensure, again, now the other part of it is who's going to reimburse you? So one of the things that has been happening is this conversation of universal health coverage, and what that means. Because for us, we are seeing it now in Kenya. We talk of SHA, the social health. I don't know, is it agency? I hope that's what the A stands for. But in essence, public insurance schemes that can then take the burden from the patient, and by pulling our risk, we're able to now have a way of being able to map out, by the time I'm developing this drug, this diagnostics, this vaccine, these are the people who will be the payers. And that is very critical because, again, the science is one thing, the business model and making that value proposition to investors is very critical. And they don't buy it if they don't see who's going to pay.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I have a friend who we were talking about their son needing diabetes, the shots, or even even the tracker. Nowadays the technology is super amazing, connected to a mobile phone. Exactly, your watch, your smartwatch, your phone. But he was saying, who's going to be buying phones and watches for their kids? It's not all families that have that capability. I think let's talk a little bit about Vilgrow and BioLink Africa, and creating this health innovation ecosystem. Are there some innovations or startups that you can reference or even showcase in terms of how they have succeeded, and what are the key ingredients that made them succeed?
So I think there are so there are two categories of startups. At least when I think of Vilgro, I always think of those ones that are maybe more IT relevant. So it's an app or it's an tech-enabled service or something for purposes of scaling. And I think we've seen a lot of success in those companies that are doing, for example, the pathology network. That has been able to reduce the amount of time. If you got a biopsy taken for the
Breast cancer.
pathologist
Yeah.
to assess whether this is cancer or not, what grade of. So that in Kenya, the standard turnaround time was about 3 weeks.
Okay. I was about to say a week. 3 weeks.
Now it is, it used to be 3 weeks. Now
Yeah.
it is a week, pretty much anywhere you are in Kenya.
Yeah.
Because of the logistics and the tech-enabled optimization of logistics.
Yeah.
That the pathology network has done. And then they're also looking to even increase that further by, again, adding AI so that the work that the pathologist is doing, machine learning can actually do it better
And faster.
than
Yeah.
the human eye. And then now we start getting into the point where the regulatory issues become critical, because if you remove a human being from that process, who is held responsible?
Yes. Not the machine.
Yes, you cannot blame the machine. The algorithm is a problem, especially when a positive diagnosis has such a huge implication. But at least it's the kind of things that we're now having those kind of discussions for. And to me, this is an amazing. And for example, if you are able to pay a premium, I think the turnaround time with TPN is now at about 48 hours.
Okay.
So moving from a national health system from 3 weeks to a week
and then to 2 days.
to 2 days
Yeah.
is just
That's
really, it's
crazy and
amazing.
amazing, yeah.
Another one is...
And right here in Kenya. And you said
in Kenya,
everywhere in the country.
Yes.
Are they working very closely with also the public, private,
So
faith-based
what they've
health
done
facilities?
is they set it off by building around their own pathology lab.
Yeah.
And then now started to onboard other pathology labs. Rather than seeing them as a competitor, they'd actually then reach out to them,
That's
create a network of labs.
Yeah.
So when a biopsy is taken by the doctor, they pick it at that health facility.
Yeah.
And they're able to look across their system and say which lab has the least backlog. So they ship it to that lab.
Oh, wow.
So you don't just stick to the closest.
Yeah.
And you're able to track just like on DHL. So at any one point, you can see where is it. So when it gets there, has it been processed? Has the pathologist looked at it? Has the report been written? And the report doesn't have to go back snail mail. That is now electronic.
Post
It goes
office.
to the and the patient is actually also notified that the report is now back, and you can now go back to discuss it with your doctor, with your physician.
Yeah.
So very simple, but if you think about it, it's massive. Another one is Flair. Flair does ambulance, and they came in initially. When I talked to the founder, I was like, "What are you talking about? How can you try to do 911 as private sector? Can this work?"
Yeah.
And
the best innovations are the craziest ones.
The craziest one. So, and they came again, a lot of AI, understanding how do you optimize the positioning of ambulances and making sure that this logistics, who responds and why, and to which health facility do they go
Are they going to, yeah.
Yes, and then they've grown it out to beyond just the ambulance, to even medical evacuations. So when you're talking of, you could be in Masai Mara, you need to be airlifted and all of that. Now they've literally built that out. And again, they started here in Kenya, started in Nairobi.
Yeah.
Now they've scaled across a few countries.
And is it profitable? Because it's business.
It is business, yes. Again, what I forgot to mention this.
The profit margins are not that great.
the everything we do, our theory of change is that, again, remember I said why we have the health challenges in Africa is because of we're a neglected market. So our approach to this is, how can you come up with solutions that are market-driven and scalable? Not scalable because of NGO and raising funds, but scalable because it's a profitable venture and investors are willing to pump in more money for it to scale.
Yeah.
So that is our entire premise of why we do what we do. So everything we work with is really, it has to be a for-profit entity addressing the needs, not of the 1%,
Yeah.
the needs of everybody.
Yes.
But again, with a business model that makes it profitable and scalable. But then the other category for me are the more invention-based kind of startups. And that one, the lead time to market is much longer. So the way we measure success has to be recalibrated, because by the time they raise their first penny, number one, you need to have invented a product, gotten regulatory approval in order to even bring it into the market.
Yeah.
So we started off looking at medical devices, because for me, I thought, life sciences is, lead time to market, usually talking 5-10 years.
Yeah.
Medical devices within 5 years, if it's not an invasive technology, it's not a heart pacer, pacemaker.
Nothing that needs surgery or anything. Yeah.
So those ones you can actually do quite a lot. So we've built an amazing portfolio of companies across East Africa that, to be honest, I'm really impressed, because these are people who, number one, we're doing this in a context where there's no industry. So there's no option of licensing out an MVP to somebody to develop it for you.
Yeah.
You need to take this idea, build an MVP, figure out the clinical trials, figure out the manufacturing, submit a dossier to the National Regulatory Authority, and get it into market. And among the companies we've supported, there's one in Ethiopia that, it's not the most innovative, but just being able to come up with a baby warmer that can also treat jaundice. It's taken them about the better part of 8 years to finally get the market approval in Ethiopia. And part of it is not even about the startups.
Yeah.
A lot of it is regulatory science does not exist. Because what our regulators don't tell you is, until they started seeing innovators knocking on their door saying this is a homegrown solution, they basically have been just rubber stamping what
Things
is imported. And so they'll ask, so where has this been approved before? It was approved in the US, it was approved in Europe, it was approved in South Africa. So they're good.
And then
so when you come to them and you're telling them, hey, we have this medical device. So there's another one in Uganda, for example, which is amazing. It's very innovative. One of the biggest killers of children is just pneumonia, children under 5. And part of it is because infants are difficult to deal with. So just bringing them into a clinic in itself can make them unsettled.
Yeah.
So, and the nurse that is already in a very overstretched health facility is being expected to not, as they take their vitals, also take their respiratory rate, because that's their number one flag indicator for potential pneumonia. Truth be told, they rarely do so, because you need to calm down the baby, listen for about minimum 30 seconds, and then count how many, the breathing and all that. So they came up with a device that is able to automate that. It's able to also listen to the lungs. It can distinguish between, is this child who is in because of allergies? Is it pneumonia? Is it common cold? What are we dealing with?
Yeah.
So a lot of AI, and again, all this is homegrown.
Yeah.
So then now you go to the National Regulatory Authority. And we are not even saying we want approval for market, we want approval for clinical trials.
Yeah.
And the first thing you realize is how many of them have any engineers in their workforce. I think for our Pharmacy and Persons Board, to my knowledge, for a very long time, it was just one.
Yeah, I was going to say 0, so
yes.
1 is good enough.
So actually, the best place for medtech right now, innovation, I'd say is Tanzania.
Yeah.
Because they actually even set up a regulatory sandbox for medtech.
Oh, wow.
Because they realized there's so much interest and there's so many innovations that were coming out of a partnership we did with the Fakara Health Institute, that the best way to respond to it, rather than keeping on, and you're a startup, you're a nobody. So nobody tells you, I don't have a playbook for you. They send you to the next person, and the person there is like, why are you being sent to me? So,
who are you?
So the next thing you know, you've been sent from this office to this office to this office for months on end, and nobody's solving your problem. So we're now trying to organize that ecosystem, bringing a lot of these innovators together. We have what we call the Transforming African MedTech Conference. Happens every August, and we're bringing in as many innovators across the continent, working in MedTech, putting them together, peer learning, discussing about our regulatory issues. They're very different from what the big industry regulatory issues are. How do we organize in a way that AMA, the African Medicines Agency starts to be cognizant? How do we allow, and but they also inviting regulators to come in and be part of those conversations. So they
And listen
realize,
in, understand.
yes. Yeah, and I remember like for Kenya, we had an amazing story during COVID where the students at Kenyatta University developed a local ventilator that never saw the
I
light of
remember
day.
this,
And the
yes,
reason
hearing
was
this.
because our regulator was treating it like a drug. You don't do a clinical trial for a machine. It takes a different kind of, if you want to
Pathway.
validate, yes.
Yeah.
So some of the things that we are being told to do is actually the main problem. To even develop these solutions in Africa, our supply chain for that innovation development, the R&D work that happens, is not the best in the world.
Yeah.
You think frugal because you have to think to be frugal.
Yeah.
And you start thinking, if I'm struggling at this point in design and development, what does that mean from repair and maintenance? And you start incorporating that into the solution as well. So even the SLA, the after sales support for homegrown is on a different level
Yes.
compared to imported.
Yeah, the number of ghost machines we have that just because they break down and suddenly we don't have the support
Yes.
on the continent. I'm sure you have like a scroll.
Oh, and a lot of documentary evidence, lots of photos of the graveyards of equipment.
So, Robert, let's pivot very quickly. You mentioned that Wilfred has now taken up the leadership of Vilgro, and now you're sitting on the board.
Yes.
But you have set up BioLink Africa as executive director. What is the difference, and how are the two, serving the health innovation ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think BioLinks is in many ways a bit of, if I can humbly put it, self-actualization. I'm a scientist. so for all the work I've done, I realized my impact was in digital solutions, in medical devices. I'm not an engineer.
Yeah.
But the reason I was setting up Vilgro was really to speak to the science, the kind of science I was doing in the labs in Cambridge. And for the life of me, I could not live with myself without saying, just looking at myself in the mirror, did I achieve my objective? And the answer was clearly no.
Oh,
And
wow.
because the more we've grown and the more we've scaled at Vilgro, the more we've been able to see, like, really the quality of the applications that come to us. I think our rejection rate moved from 10%
Down to 2%.
we
That's
are at
amazing.
the people that we admit, we are probably at 2% now.
Oh, wow.
And because the quality has really just gone up a
Yeah.
lot. And it created a huge gap for where the scientists are. Because remember, my scientists, when I was talking about our boot camp,
Yeah.
even who is your customer
Yes.
versus who is the beneficiary, we are confused. What
Could
are you
not
talking
answer
about?
that question, yeah.
Yeah, so BioLinks now speaks to that in a very powerful way, because what I discovered is it's easier to talk to the scientists as scientists. We can put out a challenge. We have BioLinks is two things. On the one hand, it's a spin-off from Vilgro. On the other hand, it's actually a private consortium. So there's BioLinks, a venture studio. But for this venture studio to operate, I need infrastructure. So I have the African Genomics Center and Consultancy, and also the Next Gen Molecular Lab. And these are genomic platforms.
Yeah.
The Next Gen Molecular Lab is Ministry of Health accredited diagnostics lab.
Wow.
And then everything else we can do within TAGCC.
Yeah.
So TAGCC means I can work with plant genomes, I can work with animal genomes, I can work with environmental. But within Next Gen, I can only work with clinical samples.
Yeah.
So, but the basic thing for me is, if you look at one of the reasons we don't see biotech startups is because the barrier of entry is extremely high. Almost every biotech startup I come across in Africa, these guys have to raise about 4-5 million on capex alone before the first dollar can go to their idea. So if that is the barrier of entry for any scientist, it's no wonder we're not seeing innovation happening.
Of course.
Because innovation really happens only in private sector. You can do so much in public sector. In academia, you can contribute to it, but real innovation really needs to happen in private sector. Because it's when you spin it off that as an investor, I can come on board and all of these other things that, it's nimble, it can move faster, get rid of the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
So my vision is basically, because of my being a co-founder on that side, we are able to open up that the infrastructure capacity we have to innovators. And through BioLinks, we bring them in, we go through the inventive step together, which means we co-own the IP, we co-share the know-how. And for a lot of good scientists, I know there are many that can be great entrepreneurs, but I also know there are many that will not even want to be an entrepreneur. And that's another big area where we see the pipeline of ideas dying, because for innovation to happen, if you link the inventor too early in the process, without the know-how, you can really not go much too far ahead.
Yeah.
So for BioLinks, we're able to give them the option. We're going to work together as scientists. We'll invent the solution for this problem, the challenge that we put out and invited you to come and address. We'll teach you the business side of it. The bootcamp comes back in.
Yeah.
but also we don't just teach, we do both the
Together.
class, we do the
Application.
experiential learning,
Yeah.
we do the patenting. And if they want to go back to academia and continue to be the professor, so be it. That is awesome. But we also have the know-how. And just like they'll get royalties in the university, they'll get royalties from us when it gets to market. But in the meantime, we are able to continue just like any other venture studio, Antler, you name them, and build out the company, spin it off, and eventually it gets to make sure that the science does not die because of either the lack of entrepreneurial interest or because of the IP being very difficult to get out of the academia, or because of the lack of infrastructure to begin with in private sector.
But for my own understanding, how does BioLink then, the sustainability side of things, how do you then benefit? Do you also end up taking a small equity on that to be able to facilitate, or are you also getting external global funders or even private sector to come on board?
Yeah. So Venture Studio's business model is interesting because you wear three hats simultaneously. You are the operator, you're the entrepreneur, you're the investor.
Yes.
So the focus for me the last 1 year has been we basically were doing a lot of work to just mobilize more capital to enhance the capacity we have. We now have, and we're very fortunate we got this funding locally to set up high throughput for genomics. So we now have Novasec X Plus.
What does high throughput for genomics mean? Just because we have different audiences.
Okay, so genomics is how do we analyze the DNA, and we're interested in human DNA, and the equipment is very, very expensive. So one of the biggest barriers we've been having on the continent is the lack of capacity for doing human genome sequencing.
Yeah,
and that's where the gold is. That's where it's not I don't call it the gold at the bottom of the pyramid. I'll just say this is the gold.
Yes,
because when you're talking of drug and vaccine development, a lot of it is now AI driven. We have a lot of knowledge of the biology. So we're able to say we are going to design a drug or a vaccine whose mode of action will be to engage with the protein XY or gene XY.
On the DNA.
And at a molecular level, you need, all of this is now being done by a lot of AI and machine learning.
Right, because we've fed all that data into the computers and then it's just
now,
run.
Guess what? In terms of the human race, the highest genetic diversity is here in Africa.
On the continent, right.
So if you want to get if you're looking for novel biomarkers, novel targets for drugs and vaccines and all of that, the best place to work with and the best data to work with is one that gives you the most genetic diversity. We've not harnessed that as Africa. We are in the very early stages through this biotech startup that I'm talking about of starting to address that. And I think for me, the difference between me and those startups is I am not building an internal pipeline. I'm building I'm an enabler.
Yes.
So I'm looking for the best brains, the best ideas, the best talent, bring them in, and we have the same capacity you'll get at all of these companies.
Amazing.
Because we want to lower the barrier of entry for them. Second thing we do is we bring in we're the operator, we're the entrepreneur as well. So we are also making sure that it will not fail because of the lack of the entrepreneurial expertise. And then the third thing is also bringing the capital. So we're funding the research. I'm currently raising a fund for $20 million to be able to actually do the pre-seed and seed round. And at least have some reserve money to participate in the Series A to make sure we're not over-diluted. So the business model comes in from owning the common stock as a founder and then owning the preferential stock also as an investor. And that is why it becomes viable. Because if I was doing it purely as an entrepreneur, as an investor, then you only get the shares for where you put in the money. I get the shares from the get-go because I'm building the venture to begin with. So I sit in the startup, in the spin-off, as a co-founder as a studio.
Yeah.
So I'm the one also dishing out the the shares to the investors.
Yeah.
So that gives you less issues of dilution and gives you a bigger say in terms of how the technology is developed and all that. Yeah.
I mean, and you've talked about AI. Do you see AI as an enabler or an
Oh,
inhibitor?
my
We're having
goodness.
so many discussions on AI and
It's
regulation
so
ethics.
what AI is doing for us in biotech right now is the equivalent of what the mobile platform did for fintech.
Okay.
Yes.
Same expound.
If you think of, I mean, we'd not be talking of fintech if we didn't have the mobile phone. If you think of M-Pesa,
M-Pesa.
I tell guys, M-Pesa did not need a smartphone. M-Pesa was built for SMS.
Yeah.
If you remember.
Yeah.
So the power, when you see a platform technology like the mobile phone, and you're able to understand how do I ride this wave, that is what AI is.
Yeah.
So AI comes to, like I said, the design and development of the drugs is AI machine learning. The genetic diversity. So when I run that Novasec machine, the data I get from it in one run is 2 terabytes.
Yes. Oof.
We're developing a liquid biopsy for prostate cancer right now. Liquid biopsy means you don't need to get, if I was to explain the process of getting a biopsy for men, for prostate, no man will ever go for that
process test.
We run away like crazy. But we're trying to simplify that by getting to a point to say, can we just get a blood?
Prick.
Yeah, just a prick like we do for malaria.
Yes.
And with that, can we be able to determine whether this is prostate cancer or not? So we have a technology we're developing for that. The analysis for that, in terms of now looking at all the DNA after we did the sequencing and identifying the biomarkers for the diagnostic test, we did it over a weekend. And when we finished, we were like, for our day, that would have been typically probably about 10 PhD students, with each of them being supported by 2 master's students and probably a couple of postdoc students to do the entire work that we did over that weekend.
Yeah.
And that was AI.
But, there's always a school of thought in the argument that AI is also taking away from jobs. The way you've painted that picture, it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It's less of the capacity and people around that one PhD student who's doing the amazing research. But isn't it taking away from jobs, even though it's speeding up?
Well, now you can, if you look at it that way, I'd say yes. But then now, as we develop these health products and the many others that will be following it at BioLinks, we are creating a whole new value chain, a whole new industry that did not even exist in Africa. And not just a value chain and an industry, we are creating a high value industry.
Yeah.
So again, this is not extractive industry. We're not talking about mining stuff. We're not talking about even growing plants and harvesting. This is purely intellectual.
Yeah.
And it has to go again through clinical trials. It needs to go through manufacturing. It needs to then go into the normal channels of market. So there's a whole pipeline of distributors, wholesalers, retailers, logistics. I mean,
marketers.
And it's export.
Yeah.
And it's a forex earner. So where are we?
Okay, I hear you. I hear you on
So and to me, this is the essence of industrialization.
Yeah.
The opposite of that is what we've been seeing, which is, when as the political class look at it and they're thinking, I need to be able to sell a story for the next 5 years.
For elections.
And so the way they think of industrialization is an EPZ. You're basically saying we're going to waive all sorts of taxes for you, come up and set up, and we actually tout our cheap labor, because the kind of jobs created will be the unskilled jobs. There's no innovation happening.
Yeah.
That's a race to the bottom.
Yes.
And I mean, we're talking of everything that we're doing creates value for so many different. We need patent attorneys. We need regulatory science and regulatory capacity for Africa to level up. I mean, there's so many things that need to change and will change and are changing that creates a ton more jobs, but more importantly, the quality of jobs also. We need to create the industry, we need to create the jobs.
I agree. And it's so exciting. Like, you're giving me goosebumps just listening to the opportunities that BioLink Africa is creating, within the markets and also with AI and rethinking knowledge-based economies. and what we're doing in the
Yes.
scientific evidence. As I'm wrapping up, I really want you, just a quick answer to this. You've talked about genomic data, and I love that, you're thinking about your computing power. And we know, is it about 2 or 3%? Actually, I think it's 2% of the African genomic data is what we contribute to the world. But now you're beginning to look at the genomes, the throughput, the high throughput. How are you making sure that we are maintaining that data locally as well, and making sure that we're looking at the ethics around that?
So I think number one, I always tell people we need to invest. And here I think I just love what Dangote was telling us the other day. If Africans don't invest in Africa, why are you expecting somebody else to invest on your behalf and for you?
Yeah.
So we need to bite the bullet. We need to invest and own the data. There's a good friend of mine who was saying us the other day, nobody thinks of looking at the biodiversity in the Amazon. Nobody thinks of trying to capture all of that and ship it to some lab in the global north. You go study it in the Amazon.
Where
do you think? Yeah, where it's at. So why do we think it's common? Why do you assume it's common sense or it's good to say that if the genetic diversity that the farmer needs to come up with solutions, not just for Africa but for the entire world, is in Africa? Why are we sending samples away? Why are we giving up our genetic data? We should actually be setting up the enabling environment for us to be able to harness it here. So for me, that is really 100% what BioLinks is really about. How do we lower the barrier of entry for the people with the mindset, with the talent, with the training, to come in and actually start saying, hey, we can do this.
Right. If there's anyone who speaks to the theme of helping ourselves, it's actually you, Robert Karanja, who's been able to do amazing in the last 10 years, some of the examples that you've spoken to. We have spoken on this podcast on a lot of things, including the role that Vilgrow Africa and also BioLinks are playing in creating an environment that grows healthcare solutions, products, as well as services. We've looked at the gaps that you are filling, including a crash course, a boot camp for scientists. This I'd love to see. I hope they come in uniform also, not their lab coats. And then, you've highlighted the incredible opportunities we have here on the continent, not just even in Kenya, in East Africa. I love that example for Tanzania and the ease of even regulation. We've talked about tech, genetic diversity, young population, and the quality of research, especially in the life sciences. As we wrap up, what's the message you want to leave us with, or our audiences?
I think this is really an exciting time to be alive.
Right.
We have challenges that demand everything we've got, but the important thing is we also have the ability and a much more enabling environment now, and the technology to drive us to where we want to be is much more readily accessible. So all it takes is the mindset. Are we embracing this, or are we still intimidated and still looking to import misfit solutions?
I love that, misfit solutions.
Into our health system, into our context. Whereas we can actually build, and I think, to be honest, we can export a lot to the world as well.
Thank you so much, Robert, Dr. Robert Karanja, the Executive Director of BioLink Africa. It's been great conversation and laughter as well.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for your time. This two-part episode is sponsored by Coalition for Health Research and Development, CREED, that is based at AMREF Health Africa. Let's keep the conversation going on all our socials. Remember to tag us on CTD Pod Africa. You can find us on YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, as well as Instagram. As always, stay curious, be bold, and keep asking the question, why?